know you know a lot about these two individuals. So I got a couple of questions I'm going to ask them, but feel free. I want you to just tell the audience before I get started a little bit about our two guests.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming in. The two speakers today are the two co-founders of the Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network. They are the original Black Panther Party Oakland Community School educators. Professor Steve over here was also one of the first people to start the martial arts program in Oakland. And Dr. Satiru Ned was one of the members of the Lumpen, which is the official Black Panther Party house buck band. And we're honored to have them both here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now, my portion is I'm not going to really get into want you to get into the meat of your book. I want to talk about what generally people always asking me and all of my other special guests, what was happening when we were sheltered in place during COVID. You know, a lot of my authors had different things that they did to stress relief, that mental health. So I want to ask both of you, okay, what is it that you did during the shelter in place besides writing? How did you chill out? What was going on at that time?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Satiru Ned. What we were doing, actually, we were holding online classes all across the country, which we still do on Saturdays, because there was a lot of misnomers concerning the health issues. So part of our sessions would talk about how the Black Panther Party revolutionized healthcare in America and the health clinics and the concept of preventative healthcare. There are so many misnomers about vaccines, about your health itself, and people started losing trust in the medical profession. So we reminded them the fact that we gained that trust. We revolutionized healthcare. We brought health clinics and opened them up all across America, which changed the whole dynamic. And it was not just for existing illnesses, but the preventative healthcare concept.
Dr. Ned, and good afternoon, everyone. We appreciate being here today to take this opportunity to share just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the history and legacy of the party. Again, going back to what we were doing as part of that COVID shelter-in period, one of the things that we were able to do is develop an 18-course academic curriculum, full academic curriculum that will be college-based all the way down to the public schools. And this academic curriculum contains the different topics, different areas of interest of the party, which have not been included curriculum-wide at any university or any school. Some speakers, former members of the party, have spoken to different topics at different times during their period of time with the Black Panther Party. Dr. Ned and I, between us, we have 26 years of experience with of the 16 years of the existence of the Black Panther Party. So this academic course that we have designed, which has not been released yet in any of the schools, just portions which we include in our weekly Zoom sessions. Also, for those new and joining the Alumni Legacy Network, they are interested, there is a 5-module course which consumes about 2 months, about an 8-week course. And those 5 areas that are presented, those topic areas include origins of the Black Panther Party, the original vision of the Black Panther Party, the community survival programs of the Black Panther Party, repression against the Black Panther Party, and the ideology and philosophy of the Black Panther Party. So those, as a basis, serve to provide an authentic view of the party. Not just what you will find in media publications, not just what you find or received from a cursory discussion, Q&A with party members. But this comprehensive module here will cover the fact and fallacies regarding the Black Panther Party. The facts that are often excluded and have been excluded from the history of the party, and the fallacies which surround the Black Panther Party. So that's part of what we did during that shelter-in period. And that module session, we had to do it twice to include newcomers who were coming into the Alumni Legacy Network.
Wow, that's pretty something. That's saying something. That's saying something because the challenge that we had here was converting our program to virtual. So I understand what you mean as far as, you know, you want to keep all your efforts going, so you find a way, even though it's challenging. So we managed to get through it. However, when you weren't doing your virtual, then were you playing golf to stress out? Were you biking? Well, I mean, we're talking about some personal things with Dr. Nen, Professor Steve. We're talking about what is it that you did personally?
Well, for me personally, you know, I have an exercise routine. Personally, what actually keeps me going too is the ability. I get a lot of calls, we get a lot of submissions. And some of the submissions are, I want to know more information about the Legacy Network, which we'll talk about too. How can I help? But a lot of them, I am a mother in Wisconsin. My son disappeared. The police took, we don't know, they found his clothes. They're trying to take my children away. These are the type of submissions that we get. Now for me, what it does, as far as how I feel about myself,
Yeah, mental health.
it is mental health for us and me, because what it tells us is that people are still reaching out for the truth. They're looking for help. They're looking for the ability to have someone speak to them. It's no different than when I do the walking tours, which the one that we were able to bring here from Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, where Dante Wright was killed. They brought in citizens, they brought in city council, they brought in the city manager, and those demographics from the whole city. And the purpose was to learn and grow and look at the principles and the work that we did. And I'm going to tie this all together, because what it does, it's like a coach. When a coach is coaching a team and he's saying good things about you, it comes back to me. It lets me know, it pumps me up. The response that we get of the knowledge, the power, and the truth, it keeps me going. Because there's a lot of despair out there. And also, I just want to mention, we were honed as joining the party, average age 19. One of our comrades, Brother Wesley Cook, you know him as Mamiya, was 15 years old when he joined. So passing on that information, sharing that with people and hearing response of thank you. You have inspired me to keep going. I've heard this many times. So what that does to me, it's like, you're okay, Satura Ned.
Yes,
You're doing the right thing, and your mind is at the right way. Getting that feedback from the average person. So for me, that's what I call, I guess, the mental aspect of keeping our sanity, as well as the fact that we face repression in one of those modules. Remember, not only the FBI, the DIA, State Department, CIA, every agency was thrown against us. We were kids. So it taught us to take that perseverance, take it in our lives after 1982, and do unbelievable things like start schools, go into the medical profession, go back to school. And so we're teaching that concept of how to work their way through everything the same way we did. And some of our people that you mentioned, our brothers and sisters, was Ron Dellums.
Oh, yeah.
And Barbara Lee was a community worker. She would sell newspapers. And to this day, she'll tell you she was a Black Panther Party member.
Ah, wonderful.
And quite similarly, when during the shut-in, a lot of things that I was doing, I had a number of telephone interviews or Zoom interviews scheduled with different academics, particularly post-grad students who were working on either their theses or they were working on their theses to develop into a book. Some of that information was printed in the Journal of African American History from post-grad students back east. Most of my interviews have come from students in the Midwest and back east. Dr. Zachary Price from UC Santa Barbara. His interview, he wanted to come over based on a 2-day stay. The brother stayed at my house and stayed at our house for 2 days, interviewing me about the history of the martial arts in Oakland, the Bay Area, and in particular about the martial arts program as we had developed it at the Oakland Community Learning Center. And I hadn't heard from him up until last spring. That was a 5-year period. After that interview and up until I heard from him again, I gave all that information, had this man up in our house for 2 days. He took pictures of everything, every photo of the martial arts program, every article that had been printed in the Black Panther newspaper, all of the editorials and columns that I had written for the Black Panther newspaper. He took photos of everything, every book, I said that I had the FBI up in my house for 2 days. And when he finally called me, he said, Brother Steve, I heard from him, wondered what had happened. And I'm going to send you my book. He had finally finished his book, and it's entitled House of the Dragon, Black and Red. And it features the black martial artists of America in this country from the 60s, particularly during the Black Power era from the 60s and the 70s. So the history of the Oakland Community Learning Center martial arts program is documented among the 12 chapters and 12 black martial artists that he interviewed during that period of time. So that took up quite a minute of time, different interviews, and we communicating with them to not only reinforce my memories of the programs and activities during that time, but also to share, in particular on that particular topic, information that had never before been released. Even though in 1975, the Oakland Community Martial Arts Program was the subject of a centerfold interview that appeared in the August 1975 issue of Black Belt magazine. So outside of that, many people hadn't seen anything visual about the martial arts program unless they happened to see the 1977 episode of Rebop that was hosted by LeVar Burton. And that not only featured an interview with students and staff of the Oakland Community School, but also a particular interview with the first of my black belts to come out of the Oakland Community Learning Center, to follow him not only through his experiences as a worker for the Seniors Against a Safe Environment program, but also his actions with the teen program that we had, and to catch him also, he and other students from the program during a teaching session and a home interview with he and his dad. So those are some of the things that came into focus during that period of time. And during that time, as we wound down the shut-in, we preparing with Craig and Farida for the 4-city tour of the different historical sites of the Black Panther Party. So we were lining them up, and eventually Craig and Farida, we did get out there, visit 15, we only chose 15 historical sites that run from our Berkeley office all the way out to final central headquarters at 8501 International Boulevard, a full excursion through the Oakland Community School, and then other tourist sites, which many people are not aware were parts of the historical legacy of the Black Party. So those are part and parcel are some of the things that maintained me and focus on what was coming down the line as the pandemic began to lighten and we began to feel our way somewhat back to normal.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I get a lot of questions from the audience regarding, even after my special guest leave. They said, well, what were they doing? Give us some more information. So thank you for sharing that. And I know it's very gratifying for both of you when you're sharing this with other individuals, because I know you get a lot of calls, a lot of emails and things like that. And the workshops that you do are very important. And so I appreciate you being here today. So I'm going to close my segment out. I appreciate you sharing those things with us, but we want to get back to the meat of our program. So I'm going to turn it over to the both of you. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon again, everyone. Again, I'm Professor Steve McCutcheon, an original member of the Black Panther Party, and now I'm one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party Alumni Legacy Network, who along with Sister Catherine Campbell, who isn't present today. So between the three of us, we formed the core of the Alumni Legacy Network, reached out to other activists, participants, people who have an old school history, people such as this young man here, CBO Halliday, who was a longtime worker on the commemorative newspaper along with past comrade Melvin Dixon. So CBO and others came on board. They were some of the origin points, some of the focal points in the development of the Alumni Legacy Network. But first of all, I want to thank our hostess here today from the African American Museum in Laverne, and particularly Craig and Farida for being able to re-edit this edition of my book, because the original appeared in 2008 without much of this information and without photos in particular. So with their input, we're able to reproduce this, get it ready for current publication and distribution. So I appreciate you and Craig and Farida for what you have done with us as part of the Alumni Legacy Network.
Now, Professor, do you want to use the podium? You can.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
That's it. All right. How do we get here? And what brings us here together today? I don't mean mode of transportation. What was the interest? What was your focus? What did it mean for you to come in here, Dr. Ned and I, bring your interest, your question about the Black Panther Party? In physical science, the origin of the universe is credited to the Big Bang. I think most of you already know that. In social dynamics, when we look at the development of the landscape in the United States, Black Panther Party began as a big bang in the social landscape. We were not some organization that appeared on the horizon in 1966. We were not a bunch of misguided malcontents. We, as George Jackson, our comrade Field Marshal, stated, we, Black Panther Party, were the next episodical leap in the development of institutions designed specifically to transform the nature of American economic, political, and social development. So we didn't stumble into history in North Oakland in October 1966. Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale, their visits, not only at Old American College, but throughout the North Oakland community, into West Oakland during that period of time, through their observations, through their study, and their involvement with the brothers and sisters on the streets, with the mamas and papas on the streets, and in the different institutions, their own experiences, in school and out of school, at work and out of work. They were able to come together and say, what we need is a program. What we need is an organization that is going to carry the Black and poor communities beyond where they are. Because it seems that all the other organizations, they've stopped in midstream. They stopped in their tracks because they had no idea what, for one, is needed in the Black community, in the poor communities. And they had no idea how to qualitatively cross those communities, find the commonalities, and this is what Huey and Bobby did. When they wrote the 10-point program and platform, they found common ground in each of the different communities. In the Black, brown, red, yellow communities, and the poor white community, they found the issues that were common across the borders. And they wrote the 10-point program and platform in 1966, October 1966, in which we updated, members of the party updated in 1972 so that it was available at our 3-day survival conference in March 1972. They prepared that program and said, no, this is not just our ideas. These are the voices of history. These are the voices of Black mamas and Black fathers, the young children, those who have suffered in education, those who have suffered in and out of work, those who have suffered in and out of houses, those who have suffered at the hands of maltreatment in the hospitals, those who have been dragged through the court systems, in and out of prisons, those who have been denied justice at the beginning, those who have been brutalized at the hands of the Oakland police. And that was the first area of concern. It drew the Black Panther Party's attention because it had been on the and at the forefront of the concerns of the Black community. The issue of police brutality, the unnecessary harassment of young Black men and women, the wanton murder of Black men who were excused and thrown by the wayside on the 6 o'clock news. That was the most glaring issue that came into focus with Huey and Bobby, and then little Bobby James Hutton. He saw the same things that Huey and Bobby. And he signed up as the first member of the Black Panther Party and became the first treasurer of the Black Panther Party. But when Huey and Bobby and Little Body hit the streets, and the few members that they had incorporated that had come to them, which included Elbert, Big Man Howard, the Forte brothers. They came together with Bobby. Then, in those early days, and Huey had said, and Bobby had understood, how are we going to get these messages across? First things first, we understand that the black community is not a reading community per se, but the black community does relate to action. It relates to those things that they can identify with. And on that point, with police brutality being flashpoint, East Oakland, West Oakland, North Oakland, almost every day, the party launched the organization after studying the U.S. Constitution, state laws in California, and the laws of Oakland at the time as they existed. How else better to demonstrate that black had the right to arm themselves for self-defense in order to protect themselves against the public displays of brutality, against the public beatings and shootings. How else than they use the Constitution and the laws themselves to demonstrate that there's been nothing but empty words, nothing but empty platitudes, nothing but promissory notes delivered in terms of the struggle, just struggle prior to the Black Panther Party, and that those things, those rights, those guarantees that had been written, they were just false documents. How else to bring those issues to the forefront that would demonstrate the U.S. Constitution and the laws did not serve black and poor people. So with that, members of the Black Panther Party, that we are going to patrol the police, not for confrontation purposes, which is too often and still mistaken. At that time, in 1966, any person in California had the right to bear arms openly in public. And they could observe the police carrying out their functions without interference, as observers, to act on behalf of those citizens who were being arrested, to inform them of what their legal rights were when arrested. And this is what caught people's eye. Armed black men, not one lone nut, out there with a weapon in his hand, bad-mouthing police. This was not the situation. This was an orderly, armed patrols to observe the police, to inform those who were being arrested of their right. Take the arrest. Take the arrest. We will bail you out. But to demonstrate to the community, to those observers, and there were plenty of observers, plenty of people standing around, wanting to know who were these crazy niggers with guns talking bad to the police. That was the word that spread throughout the community at that time. And if you notice, if you happen to catch some of the uncensored news journalism, the news photos, some of the police arrest reports, you will find that not one member of the Black Panther Party was arrested for carrying a gun, for having possession of a weapon during these armed patrols. But the media excluded that. Militant Negroes arrested in Oakland for possession of guns. That was the message they gave. They didn't hear the comment that the Black Panther Party was only observing and patrolling the police so that they could inform those being arrested, and also to inform the police that we had the right to bear arms, loaded arms, but we also understood the process of how to carry weapons, how to display weapons, without crossing hairs with any of those in law enforcement who were more ignorant than they were of enforcing the law. And this is what caught the media. This is what caught the attention. People in North Oakland, West Oakland, East Oakland. Who are these bad brothers? But then Tarika Lewis came along. She became the first woman to join the Black Panther Party. So it was not all male organization. More women started to come into the Oakland in those early days between 1966 and 1977. That created a flashpoint in the halls of California legislature. Senator Nolan, I believe he was out of Southern California. He had heard the ripples throughout the community about armed blacks coming out of Oakland, confronting the police, asking questions about what are they doing when they were supposed to be the deciding authorities on law enforcement. His actions led to the proposal of a Senate bill in the California legislature. And during that time, as the party received word of that pending legislation, it was decided to take a delegation to Sacramento and explain our side of the question. The Mulford bill was designed to make it illegal for anyone in California to openly carry a weapon, to disarm blacks in particular. But there was another point that was included that didn't get a chance to be aired during that time. May 27th, delegation of Panthers led by then Chairman Bobby Seale were going to Sacramento, but they had a message to deliver. Bobby Seale had a message to remember, which has never come to the light of day in terms of what that delegation was doing there. And that was to deliver what became known as Executive Mandate Number 1, written by Huey. That was a statement that was supposed to be delivered on May 2nd, 1967. But there was never any mention of that. When the delegation arrived in Sacramento, we understand that later they were given the wrong directions. They were misdirected to where they would argue Executive Mandate Number 1 on the floor of the California legislature. Instead, what we hear about with what is now historically covered is only the melee that occurred after the delegation arrived, went to the wrong location at the California Assembly. All you see are the hysterics and the police reacting by arresting members of the Black Panther Party at that time, and all you could see was the guns being toted away but no comment in terms of what precipitated the arrest. And none of the arrests occurred at the Capitol. They occurred as members of the party left the scene, stopped at gas station. Question, arrested, but the media just showed the arrest for guns, Negro militants with guns. The stance of the Black Panther Party in Oakland, and that delegation, May 2nd, 1967. This was the bind in Oakland. That was a spark that was seen across the country and across the world. And as the message of Panthers in Oakland spread, as that vision in Sacramento spread, so did other areas come to the Black Panther, come forward. We had people coming from San Francisco first. Then after Denzel Dow, young brother was killed in Richmond, the party began organizing in Richmond. It was active in Berkeley. Down in Southern California, another group who had come off the campuses of UCLA, who were involved in neighborhoods with this brother named Al Prentice Bunchy Carter. They came together and let's go up to Oakland and find out what they're doing. And by their communication, a handful of members came together, a handful of new young black men and women came together to form Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party, the first chapter outside of Northern California. Okay, so that bang, just as the universe began expanding from the Big Bang, so now was the story of the Black Panther Party. So now others were wondering who they were, what they were doing, and how. Southern California, the first stop outside Northern California. Didn't stop there. Aaron Dixon and Elmer Dixon had come down from Seattle. They wanted to talk with Bobby and other members of the party. What are y'all doing down here? We need something up in Seattle like this. With that type of communications, that back and forth communication, Aaron and Elmer went back to Seattle, opened up the first chapter outside of California, the Seattle chapter, Black Panther Party. April 4th, 1968. April 6th, 1968. At the murder of Martin Luther King, the killing of little Bobby Hunt on 127th Street. Those two events are part of the echo which was created in Oakland, which came on the heels of Sacramento. End of 1967 into 1968, the party sprang like a ripple across the country. Southern California, then Seattle outside, went to the Midwest, Des Moines, Iowa, Omaha, Nebraska, landed in Chicago, with two brothers, iconic brothers there, who after some disagreement with other groups, north side of Chicago and the south side, they emerged as the legitimate chapter in Chicago. Led by Deputy Minister of Defense Bob Rush, who is now Congressman Bob Rush, and Deputy Chairman Fred Hampton. With that chapter as the glue in the Midwest, other chapters formed. Pete O'Neill and his wife Charlotte O'Neill reached out of Kansas City and opened up the Kansas City chapter of the Black Panther Party. There were some other attempts to open up the Black Panther Party along the way in other cities. But by then, Bobby Seale and David Hilliard said, wait a minute, we're growing a little bit too big, too fast. So they began making stops at these new locations, making sure they were abiding by not only the 26 rules and regulations of the party, but also the 10 points of attention which had been adopted from the Red Book, Chairman Mao Zedong's Red Book, and the 3 main points of attention. All of these were included in the organizational structure as behavior guides for members of the party, and with the 10-point program and platform as the blueprint for developing programs and for educating and organizing and mobilizing in those communities. Huey, Bobby, and David made those stops. They reached the East Coast about the same time that New York had come on board to open up a chapter and branches in New York. And you have to remember the climate on the West Coast politically was not as it appeared to be on the East Coast. Remember, the East Coast was the home of Malcolm X. That was Malcolm country on the East Coast, up and down the East Coast. That was also the territory of different nationalist organizations who believed in ownership, developing states out of the current states for black development. All those ideas were rampant then. Bobby and David Hilliard had to enlighten these newcomers about the necessity of following not only a chain of command, but also developing progressively from a narrow set of ideas to a larger set of ideas that would not only have us looking at blacks as just one people, but looking at the larger arena of poor communities across the country. So from New York, chapter spread Boston, eventually New Haven, down to Philadelphia. And we in Baltimore became the last charter member of the Black Panther Party in the 1968. In the 1968, we had to put a lid on all chapters open, because there were too many chapters. Different things were happening that were not in alignment with the rules of the Black Panther Party, with the regions of the Black Panther Party. So some of them were closed down at that time, by the end of '68. And as a result, in 1969, summer of 1969, Bobby Seale called the United Front Against Fascism out here in Oakland. All the chapters brought representatives from different organizations to Oakland and Berkeley to develop an idea, a vision of how to confront the spread of fascism, not only from the law enforcement and police levels, the blatant use of fascism, existence of fascism, but also how it was being manifested in the business levels, and particularly at the political level, which had become rampant, especially with a President Nixon running things backwards, upside down, and sideways. Attorney General John Mitchell, and then you had the right, J. Edgar Hoover, who was administering injustice. And so malevolent was his first name, and the first action of federal law, and who was the creator of the COINTEL program, counterintelligence program, of which the Black Panther Party, by the time the Freedom of Information Act was made available in 1973, found that of the over 400 acts committed against blacks and other groups who were on that list of J. Edgar Hoover, over 270 acts that included infiltration, sending provocateurs, creating instability within the Black Panther Party and other organizations. 70% of all the acts directed at black militants and dissident organizations were directed against the members of the Black Panther Party, particularly its leadership. And any of those who they, in different areas, were deemed a messiah. Many of the members, the leading members of the chapters of the party, were under constant surveillance, under constant threat. All of the chapters had letters sent back and forth between them, supposedly originated by members of the Black Panther Party. COINTEL release of those papers through the Freedom of Information Act tells us they were originated from the offices, the individual field offices of the FBI. We found evidence in those papers that many of the informants, many of the provocateurs were those who had prior petty charges on their record. And it was easy for the FBI or the state police agencies to bend their arms so they could infiltrate those chapters, so that they could go in with acts of provocation that will create the illusion of Panthers being thugs, being involved in illegal activities. And the more that these actions were allowed to occur, the more the media was able to present misinformation. Those who were unaware of the party fell into the lap of the illusion created by J. Edgar Hoover, the myth of Panthers not being interested in the well-being of black and poor people, of being undermined by a legitimate authority originating by the legitimate power and prestige of the federal government under the auspices of the President of the United States, and put into operation through a 7-decade director of the FBI and the agencies at the state and local levels who succumbed to that power, that type of influence. When Huey P. Newton was released in August 5th, 1970, just 2 days after that, young Jonathan Jackson in Marin County staged a takeover in the courthouse there. He wanted to free 2 prisoners who were standing trial there at the courthouse. Jonathan Jackson was shot down during that attempt. 2 weeks later, a year and 2 weeks later, his brother, his older brother, the indomitable George Jackson, was murdered at San Quentin. Just days before his book, Blood in My Eye, was to be released. When Huey P. Newton was released and was walking back to the streets in Oakland, he had had time to understand some of the misdirection of the party, especially that was led by Elvis Cleaver, which led to the absence of a lot of branch members from the New York chapter. This disagreement surfaced 1971 with a public disagreement between Huey P. Newton and Elvis Cleaver. That was part of the action that during that year led to a decision by our Central Committee that because, one, the size of the party at that time, and there were so many unseen manipulations. Remember, at this time, we did not know about the Freedom of Information Act and the extent of COINTELPRO. But we decided to consolidate the chapters of the party. Bring those members of the Black Panther Party from chapters all around the country who could come to Oakland and build the base of operation. That was the starting point. That was a new direction for members of the Black Panther Party. And it was a new look to some who had decided outright that the Black Panther Party no longer existed. Again, because of the misinformation of the news media, and also at the undermining of the FBI. But the party survived as members came to build this base of operation. We thrived as we built this base of operation. Developed the Singers Against the Faith Fearful Environment program. We developed the Oakland Community School, which is the first model school for elementary education. Developed the Oakland Community Learning Center, and all of the programs, all of the survival programs that were created at that point. We ran Bobby Seale for mayor, Lane Brown for city council, and people said, what's wrong with the Panthers? They reformists? No. We looked at our vision and our evolvement over the years. We used the political process to illustrate to others that participation in the political arena is necessary for blacks and poor to understand that the power of the government is invested through the power of the people. Over the years, through the 1970s, finally ending in 1972, the Black Panther Party's vision, its growth, development, even though crippled along the way. And with the end of the Black Panther Party, with the Black Panther Party officially ending in 1982, even though the organization that withered away was withering away, and Huey himself years before said that the Black Panther Party would not exist forever, that it would wither away, but the ideas would continue, the visions would continue. Following that period, others have come in to take up the banner of the 10-point program and platform because that remains alive today. The Alumni Legacy Network today has picked up those programs, the 10 programs, 10 points of the 10-point program and platform. We've developed initiatives that meet the conditions of the day. We still committed to the original idea that people can control their own destiny and that people need not need. Thank you all.
You know, we're considered, if you ever watch wrestling or any other sport, we're considered a tag team champions in terms of getting information across. So let's give Professor Steve another hand. We could possibly talk about all the aspects of the Black Panther Party, which are ongoing in our classes. So I want to say again, welcome to everyone. And I'm just going to read a statement, because I'm taking this from the local, even to the national. So I'm going to read a statement that was written concerning the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party was the last and most significantly domestically based revolutionary political organization to challenge American imperialism. And we were recognized as such around the world. At its height, the Black Panther Party encompassed 68 chapters in the United States, including our National Committee to Combat Fascism offices, which were manned by people from the white community to educate their community in relationship and cooperation with the Black Panther Party. We established an international branch in Algeria and 8 other nations. You could have to leave America, come to Algeria. You would get a passport, visa, many major conferences with the Palestinians, the people from Vietnam, Asia, Africa. We hold major conferences about what was going on in America and creating a tie that binds between struggle that we see again coming together all over the world. We had relationships in the Congo, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, South Africa, North and South Vietnam, North Korea, Japan, the People's Republic of China, India, Uruguay, Peru, Nicaragua, Cuba, Palestine, Iraq, Iran, Israel, Australia, and throughout Europe. And ultimately, the Black Panther Party's influence and power provoked a frenzy by the U.S. federal government and local law enforcement to destroy the structure and either assassinate or mobilize its members, an effort that continues today with a former Panther still incarcerated. You know him as Mumia Abu, comrade brother Wesley Cook. I wanted you to see the scope of the influence of the party, which is unbelievable today. The interviews Professor Steve talked about, we're getting calls from all over the world. The concept that we want to know, we want to learn. It's not just the history of the Black Panther Party, but it encompasses the history of the struggle of all of us. The amazing story of the original Rainbow Coalition, which consisted of people from everywhere in the communities, the Native Americans on the reservations, and you've heard of the story of the Rainbow Coalition in Chicago, which they never really did in the movie, which was not something we supported. The idea of here you have poor whites in North Chicago, yes, the Beverly Hillbillies from the Appalachian Mountains, Confederate flag waving, became our brothers and sisters and allies. The story of the Rainbow Coalition, of being in the office along with Emory Douglas, 8501 International Boulevard, 1973. We heard a clamor. We heard these people marching down the street. And in front of the group, the sign said the United Farm Workers. We called them into our office and asked them, what are you doing? He said, I'll say to Chavez, this is Dorothy, we are marching for farm workers' rights. Do you know where we can get some food? 15 minutes later, we locked up the office. and marched another 20-plus blocks down to the Oakland Community Learning Center and School, 6118 International Boulevard, and fed them. Thus began a relationship that spanned 5 years when no one else supported them. And they also joined in with the campaign of Bobby Seale and Lane Brown, which they didn't get elected, but in 1977, we helped elect the first black mayor of Oakland, Lionel Wilson, without the help of the Democratic Party. But these are all stories in themselves. So I wanted you to see the scope of how the Black Panther Party was invited to China twice. When Kissinger had to come back and tell Richard Nixon, Mr. President, you cannot go. They wanted to see. We didn't ask to come, they requested us. First trip was Dr. Huey P. Newton. The second trip was an entourage, which included Dr. Bert Small, who's still in partial practice at Roots Clinic. They just opened up a clinic in Boston, an acupuncture clinic in his honor. While he was there, he was taught a form of acupuncture, the cluster form, for PTSD and heroin addiction, which was running rampant in the black community. Up until 1960, when it was introduced, we did not have the drug problems in the black community. It was put in there on purpose, which Ehrlichman said there was really no war on drugs in America. It was to go after Black Panther Party members and black radicals, as well as white radicals, and anyone who was against the U.S. government. So the building concept, the understanding of why the world related to what we did and what we're doing now, and how they adopted the concept of the 10-point platform and program, and the survival programs, which we call them the pending revolution, would sustain our community. Everything you see, from feeding to seniors, to education, to health, we did it, and we were young. But we were dedicated, and we had a resolve when we realized what we were up against. It did not deter us. Along the way, we lost so many people. Along the way, we had so many people locked up. Along the way, we had so many people die. When Professor Steve mentioned Apprentice Bunchy Carter, who actually came from what they call the Renegade Slauson. CRIP originally meant Community Revolution in Progress. There's a whole story behind them and the Bloods and all these groups who were there to escort seniors, make sure the businesses worked well. There's a whole story of how they were politically educated through the Black Panther Party. This happened in Chicago. It happened in New York with Chacha Ramirez, where we had the Young Lords. They were first the Lincoln Park Gang, 5,000 strong Puerto Ricans. He turned them into a political organization. So domestically, let's take it outside the block, the corner of just Oakland, California. As we tell young people and everyone, you have an unbelievable royal legacy that started with some of the people that were mentioned initially and our brothers and sisters who worked alongside of us. So I'm going to also mention, I'm going to talk about the Panther symbol, where it came from, what it was used for. And this is the confusion of what they've done when people see the Panther, what the FBI and America has implanted subliminally in people's minds. Oh, that don't know the real story. They think of, as Professor Steve said, a bunch of crazy niggas with guns, and that's all they did. Well, the symbol of the Black Panther originated in Lyles County, Alabama. Before I joined the Black Panther Party in 1966, I was a member of SNCC. In California, we sent off our paperwork, we got our buttons, our certificate of membership, and we began our work on the campuses until Stokely came out in 1967. We had a chance to talk with him concerning joining that organization. So the symbol of the Panther came from Clark College University. It was drawn by 3 women. And the symbol was a billboard symbol. It was used for voting rights in the civil rights era. In the South, there was a white rooster, and the symbol would say, vote, pull the lever, and go home, the symbol of the Black Panther. It was borrowed and brought here. It was given as something, a tool by Bobby Seale and Huey Newton to use and formulate the concept of what we knew historically in the work that we did of the Black Panther Party, which the symbol belongs to to no one, to no organization. It belongs to the people. So that symbol says and meant quite a bit. Professor Steve started off on the East Coast, and he didn't have a chance to mention when he came out here, he was told he'd be here for a season. We knew that many people would not go back, so 50 years later, he's still here from Baltimore. Yes, I had the opportunity to actually join the party in Sacramento, California. And this is amazing what I'm about to tell you. I remember my father was a World War II veteran, and he would always talk to me about the Hellcats, 371st Tank Division, with General Patton in World War II would save the Allied troops. And the name of them, their motto was, "We come out fighting." It was a symbol of Black Panther. And I remember he would always show me this, but it never dawned on me. The college I ended up going to in Sacramento when I joined the party was the symbol of the Panther, was there again. So I guess it must have been my destiny, because on that day when Bobby Seale and Emory Douglas and the Forte brothers and the majority of those people that came into the Capitol were community people representing that group. I was downtown that day. I went in behind them. I saw, and it made such an impression on me. I didn't join the party until after that fact, when Bobby Hutton was killed. We asked ourselves as teenagers why this was happening. I want you guys to understand, we were in a changing environment. We were aware of the civil rights movement. There were various disagreements on behavior. What should we do and what should we not do? We were not allowing you to beat me. You are not allowing you to coddle prod me. So at the time when Martin Luther King was murdered, we had a phrase. We still do. The king is dead. The king of love is dead. Long live the king. Now, historically, a lot of people don't know that at that time, when Martin Luther King's funeral, Bobby Seale and 8 early Panthers went to Martin Luther King's funeral. And it was paid for by none other than Marlon Brando, the Godfather, who was very active with the Black Panther Party. There's a whole story behind Hollywood and other people on the East Coast coming behind the Black Panther Party. The ability to give away thousands of bags of groceries with chickens in every bag was because major companies behind the scenes were supporting giving away food to the community. They began to realize the truth also in terms of what we were doing. So, as we begin to develop my tenure in the Black Panther Party, joining in Sacramento, 1968, when Bobby Seale, and he personally told me, he says, he says, I went there and there was a who's who of everybody, not only government officials, but everybody from Harry Belafonte to Cecily Tyson, you name it. And he had an opportunity to talk to all the ministers, Reverend Alfred, Claretta. And this is what they told Bobby Seale, that Martin Luther King always believed in self-defense. He wanted what we call a concealed weapon permit, doing one of the most successful things, the Montgomery bus boycott. And he had a chance to talk to all of them about the emergence of the Black Panther Party. So the symbol that was adapted for voting rights and the rights that you didn't have, that we were trying to establish, that was borrowed and brought here to Oakland, and the political connection of that civil rights movement. People ask us, how did that make the connection? Well, that was the beginning, as we say, from civil rights to social justice and revolutionary change, which Oakland, California, and this Bay Area became the epicenter. And honestly, it still pretty much is the same today. So for me, having that experience, I was also an athlete. Tommy Smith and John Carlos are good friends of mine. We were planning different strategies. We all saw what took place at that time. But in 1969, for me, I was called in by my coach and he told me the FBI visited. You can go to any school you want to, but if you don't, you're going to suffer the consequences. It was a life-changing decision for me at that point in time. So what I ended up doing, I stayed the course. And I never saw him again because in 1969, my good friend Ronald Reagan, I'm saying that with sarcasm, he used to get copies of our paper. They launched COINTELPRO. San Diego was attacked. our office was attacked, and we were in it. We were having a Father's Day celebration. We had a Mother's Day celebration before that, bringing mothers and families, and we had like 10,000 people with fathers and their children. Solidifying, bringing the community together. We were fortunate enough, we had children in the office. As they opened fire, we were able to get them out. And then, after about 6 months, we closed the office and we were called to Oakland, where I served at Central Headquarters as part of their original security. I came from a military family at that time. And I was responsible for the safety of David Hilliard and some of the other members. Bill Jennings, who is our historian, was responsible for the safety of UEP Newton. And we were young. We did these things as we began to grow and learn during that first period of what we call Black Power. So everything that we did, every talent that we had, we gave it 150%. It was not a 9 to 5. It was 24/7 in the beginning period. And those uniforms, the black berets and leather jackets, were gone after that first period of time. There were no police patrols after the Sacramento incident. The executive mandates were issued. All the things that we had as far as weapons were registered legally in our homes as well as in our offices. And we encouraged the community to do so, which created what we call a natural community watch group for not only misbehavior of police officers, but also of misbehavior of certain people in the community. It created a peaceful transition and a learning environment for each and every person that became part of what we did. So part of our experience and having the opportunity to still be here, which is amazing to us, that we're still able to be here and teach this information and share with you our experiences. And again, what we're doing today is really scratching the surface to just give you a true overview and hopefully have the ability to dispel some of the great myths and fallacies. And we're here, we're going to be here. You'll be able to contact us because one thing that we want to be able to do is create classes. We're going to have to teach our children. The banning of books. What we were talking about, why they don't let people check them out. And we're going to talk about, just before I close, about why it's important to build your own library. So all these things that Professor Steve talked about that were happening began to gel around the world. It was truly amazing. Our visits to the People's Republic of China, visiting North Korea, all these are still recorded in their historical concepts where they tell that story. The grandfather of the present ruler of North Korea, they were the most prosperous country before America put a stranglehold on what they called communism. So the concept of Juche, use what you got to get what you need, is what we adapted. So what that did for us, it allowed us to constantly develop and grow. What does revolution look like now? Right now, it's a revolution of education and discovering who you are. So we were able to evolve part of our principles and ideology of how we thought and how we were able to think today. In 2016, when we had this unbelievable event at the Oakland Museum, people came from 30 countries, Australia, New Zealand, Falkland Islands, who had Black Panther Party chapters, told their own stories. Tel Aviv, Israel, Jerusalem, who adopted point number, we want decent housing, fit for the shelter you and me. They came from Tunisia. They came from Algeria. And they came from Morocco, brothers and sisters. So all over the world, it was amazing how people adopted the same principles. And we were young. We had no idea what we were faced with. So I met a person from the State Department. He walks up to me and says, "You guys deserve the best. Who are you?" I was part of that committee with the State Department, the Department of Defense, the DIA, the CIA, the SIA, NSA, all the agencies. He said you were doing the right thing. And what made you so dangerous is you understood what we were doing and were able to take that information and break it down not only to the brothers and sisters going to college, to the man or person hanging out in the corner in the community. So all these abilities and things we begin to realize, and so we were able to adapt as time and things changed and went along. So for me, being part of that as a young person, so my period from 14 of the 16 years, from 19 to what, I'm in 30s. You talk about Michael Jackson missing his childhood. I missed that whole period of life. Opening up health clinics at 20 years old, feeding thousands of people, helping with sickle cell anemia testing, which we started at Foundation. And guess what? It's needed again today. We have to begin that. We have to give our children health checkups. We're going to be very active in doing those kind of things. Just to continue my journey, because we want to have some time to let people ask questions and make comments. The other part of my journey, after coming to Oakland and being part of what we call central headquarters, everything that we did was for a reason and a purpose. So we had our political education classes, and at the height, our Black Panther Party newspaper was 300,000 to 400,000 strong every week. We were able to disseminate the message for the United Farm Workers that do boycott grapes, boycott lettuce. They were threatened. We had brought the Filipino workers together to work with them in the fields. The auto workers, the unions, people started getting threatened. So what we did, we created another mandate. We told them, sit down, the Black Panther Party will do it. So all over the country, party members and community activists joined the boycott lines against Safeway. They did not count on our intervention. We were successful in shutting down 2,000 Safeway stores across America. Boycott grapes, boycott lettuce. So this was a way of showing real people action. As we say, the power of the people. So all these things that Professor Steve was talking about, how the party's origin, and he just touched on the origin period. As we begin to develop after the expulsion of Eldridge Cleaver, and I want to let you know that that was a result of just what he said, the infiltration and the distrust of the FBI, and creating a division by some people feeling, I don't want to feed kids, I want to do something else. I don't want to start health clinics, that's not the way to go. Well, we continued that path, which allowed us to continue to be active, to continue to create entities, to create examples for the community. All our programs are created for the community to initiate themselves on our way to economics. Many of you might not know, right here in Oakland, California, we have a clothing and shoe factory right there in Jack London Square. How do you think the clothes we gave away were new? The shoe programs were new shoes. The concept was to create our factories, employ our own people from every walk of life in our community, poor and oppressed black people, and set these concepts up all over America. They weren't happening. The electoral politics of controlling your own local elected officials. When Jean Quan ran, even though they had ranked choice, she adopted the ranked choice method of how we still engaged and were able to reach everybody in the community. We still have the highest turnout, 99%, at average of 97% during that Bobby Seale campaign. No one has come near getting that many people out to vote. So in 1977, we were successful in electing Lionel Wilson as the first black mayor. The concept then was to take a group of people all across America and elect responsible people in every major city where there were populations of black and oppressed people, so you would not have the conditions that you have today of money being misused, deals being made, people being homeless, miseducated, not fed, no shoes on their feet, children homeless. This would have not happened. This is another move they made against us. So I'm bringing all these other factors in to, now I had something else. This is how it happens with us. I have a whole concept, but once we get into what we're talking about, I try to cover what we feel people need to know to really see the real global scope. And it has not stopped. The Panther movement in England, all over Europe, how we were so honored to hear the stories of how we inspired people all over the world, even to this day. So what we learned was that nothing changes overnight. You have to think about your life as a way of life. I am going into this and I'm going to reach one person. Each one reach one, each one teach one. This is the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Oakland Community School also. We'll be doing celebrations and things concerning that as we go along this year. So what we're looking at now, as we really examine what is happening in America, and I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to get a little bit into the Olympic book, just a little bit. The scare that we see is the same thing that was used during our period. Only the center of demonization was the Black Panther Party. Imagine seeing J. Edgar Hoover, the President of the United States, on TV, and you're a parent, and your son or daughter's in the Black Panther Party, and they're telling them that they're the greatest internal threat to the security of America. They are domestic terrorists. Wow. Now the focus is the demonization of nations and people. We saw this pattern before, and it's already been stated by, we call the new Joe McCarthy, during the McCarthyism, when Paul Robeson and everybody was prosecuted because they said, I believe in people power. If you are a socialist, it is evil and treasonous to America. We're going to do everything we can to destroy that. So anyone from the NAACP to a student, demonstrate anything we're doing is now demonized. So the real purpose, as I'm telling you, we know this, is to demonize those nations. They're no longer calling China the People's Republic of China. They're using the word Communist China. They're evil. Those Russians are evil. Well, Africa is next. I'll give you the world scope because Africa has said we are not in tune and lockstep with America. They have neglected us, and the only thing they want to do is use us and our resources. We have the youngest population in the world, and the population is growing toward non-relationship with the United States. Sanctions against almost 20 African nations. Well, let's put it into perspective. What that means is demonization against black people of color, demonization against Asians, again, demonization against LGBTQ, and demonization against disabled people. So what we're seeing is not directed toward them, it's directed toward the activism of America. Those of us who are concerned about teaching our children the truth, covering up books, taking the ability away and finding you, if you touch it, you'll go to jail for 5 years. Burning, we know that they burned books already. Fahrenheit 451 of Malcolm X. They're even talking about banning information about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, telling the true story of her and went beyond the bus because they talk about what she really did in the book. How she went and investigated rape cases of black women who were unjustly treated in the South. All this stuff is happening right before us. So we're looking at the same things that we did before. Why we created schools. Why we created our own health clinics. Why we began talking about creating our own housing. And by the way, I just want to mention those who don't know, our concept has always been housing according to income. Housing according to income. Some of the first 300 units back in the 70s, that was the concept. Well, my good sister and friend for life, former chairwoman Elaine Brown, has done just that. Matter of fact, go by 7th and Campbell. When it was told it could not be done. When she first got that land, they started growing food that they were supplying. And they were incarcerated brothers and sisters coming back who got the jobs. Then they seized the land and the city council finally gave it to them. And now they're beginning construction of a 76-unit apartment, state-of-the-art complex, and beneath, we're creating a wealth of businesses for people of color to actually open up business and make West Oakland the mecca, the corridor of economic prosperity. And no one in that building for 15 years will pay over $300 for their rent. Families, individuals. We need that kind of thing again. Housing should be according to your income. There is enough in this city. We know that to actually pay off these builders who should never build where they built in the first place and say, we're subsidizing this. We're putting our people in. Single mothers, parents, seniors, teachers, everyone, our people could stay here in Oakland. I mentioned that, we mentioned that to one person who ran for mayor who didn't win, and it never was followed through, but we know it could be done. These simple principles and concepts that worked before is what we are bringing back to the table for people to understand. So we engaged in all of that. That's why the electoral politics right here. You can control the money in your community. You got the right people there. You can even go to the state. We're the ones who started people camping out in front of the politicians' houses. We taught that process a long time ago. If you're not in the office, we'll get answers. So for me, my journey in all these concepts and working at the school, and of course, one of the things that I did is I was a member of this group called The Lumping. The author of this book, Ricky Vincent, it was introduced to him by Boots Riley. Boots Riley the Coup, and also Dead Prez, all your progressive rappers, they heard our music. We didn't do it for fame or fortune. It's no different than what Professor Steve did with the martial arts program, the work that he did all over the city and changed thousands of lives in that area, all over the country. We did it because it had to be done. And so we were asked at that point in time, it was an idea of Henry Douglas, our minister of culture, who still does so many wonderful things, hasn't changed his personality, came up with the idea of using the funk music of that time to get the message across. As my comrade brother Bill Calhoun would say, if you're not going to come to a rally, which were community events, you're not going to come to the offices, you're not going to read the paper, well, I guess we'll just sing it to you. And thus, we did. It's an amazing concept, and I'm going to take the time to read a couple of things about myself that are interjected into this particular book. It's an amazing compilation of our lyrics, our words, and also what was going on around us at the time. We never knew that we'd end up influencing people like Marvin Gaye, who one of our members, Michael Torrance, once he left the party, ended up singing with Marvin Gaye. There's a story about Michael Torrance, Marvin Gaye, and the connection to the Lumping and the Black Panther Party. He worked in Motown after that. We had no idea that we'd influence people like Teddy Pendergrass and Wake Up Everybody. We got to give more power to the people. Like the powers that be. For God's sake, give more power to the people. John Lennon, who was a great supporter of ours, power to the people. All these artists were influenced by the Black Power movement, and they stepped up to the table. Aretha Franklin was planning on doing major conferences with us where we were going to be part of that. And it came out that she had a 275-page FBI report that she was complicit in working with the Black Panther Party. Other artists like Roberta Flack. All these people, but we didn't go into it for that reason. Even at one point, and Elaine Brown had an album out called Seize the Time. She didn't get paid for it, we didn't get paid for anything. And Suzanne DePaz called our office and asked that we come down there. She heard our tape through Lenny Williams. People would come and rehearse at our learning center in East Oakland. So he recorded us, and she wanted to record us for Motown. Didn't do it. Because we were dedicated to the work that we do. We're not going to lead the Black Panther Party. And I remember when Ricky Vincent talked to each and every one of us, the same thing was said. We were Black Panther Party members. We did that because it was a way of reaching the community. All of us had a musical background. All of us had come from different areas of the community. Bill Calhoun was Billy King on KSOL, those who remember KSOL, and then KDIA, which actually hosted our radiothon to raise funds. Bill, everybody from Don Cornelius, the Soldier, they would all come. The choirs would come. The individuals would come to support the Oakland Community School, where the concept of each one teach one, each one reach one, which housed the great martial arts program, and Professor Steve was teaching math. We were also instructors there. I want to give you guys a picture of all the things that we did, and we never complained about the work. Even when it seemed impossible, how am I going to start a health clinic? Because of our ideology, we had to do it. We did what we did. So, what surprised America was when most of the leadership, the spokespeople, Bobby, Ewing, ended up getting locked up. Programs went on. They could arrest people, and then someone would show up the next day, another party member opening the office and they give it a press statement. That is because from the top to the bottom, and the bottom to the top, we all were actually educated in responsibility. We knew this would happen. So for the first time, cut off the chief's head, and the rest of them went out the window. One of them even made the statement that now we've created thousands of Malcolm X's all over America, but they're all in lockstep and they're all on the same page. We've never seen black youth in America work in unison, work on the same concepts. One breakfast program, all of a sudden there's 40 or 50 of them. So my responsibility is to take newspapers from Ronald Reagan. So Jesse Youngman, all the head people, be like Governor Newsom reading the paper. He made the statement, the Black Panther Party is feeding more children than the U.S. government. Thus began in the embarrassment of the U.S. government for not taking care of the community. Women and infant children, WIC program, everything that we did was not for fame or notoriety. We did it because it had to be done. So while we never were out throwing bricks, we were never out burning down buildings, what we were doing is changing the dynamic of who we were and informing people this is the way to do it. So, what I'm going to do now is I got a couple little excerpts that I'm going to read. This is really interesting because being at Central, when we were asked to join this singing group for the purpose of education, little did we know how quickly it would come into play once Bobby Seale was kidnapped. As the group began to establish as an official Panther project, a fourth singer, Sacramento chapter co-founder James Mott, that's what it's originally called, was added to the group. Mott had more experience than the others, and William Calhoun believed was there to keep the situation running smoothly. James Mott was put in to make sure we stayed in line. I think that we didn't turn out to be a bunch of musicians, because James came from the national headquarters. The three of us came up from San Jose. We were just still college students, and I think they wanted to make sure we didn't turn out to be debutante little musicians. So they put a hardcore brother in with us. But after they got to know me, that wasn't my purpose. I was really glad because of the duties to do something else in terms of what I could do and use my talent as a musician. All of us have been in music, had sang in groups, had taken music formally, either playing concert piano like Clark Bailey, who grew up in Brookville Village, had a scholarship to Stanford University in music. Ada became a Black Panther Party member. This story was all over the country. Professor Steve mentioned how people came from every college. MIT, Yale University, UCLA, historically black colleges, Howard University, and joined the Black Panther Party, the Brain Trust. So the rank and file, as they call it, were composed of not only brothers and sisters from the college campuses, but also came back from Vietnam and other community organizations. So you had this intelligent, very savvy group of people coming together and taking on. We were also joined by our Asian brothers and sisters, white radical brothers and sisters, as well as our Latino brothers and sisters. So it was the students and Vietnam vets who drove the movement after we came off the campuses. So the other idea is I was going to briefly talk about one other thing, a couple other things. One thing that we did, I just want to give you an idea of what we did as we began to do these concerts. As our reputations grew and as Emory Douglas placed larger and more prominent advertisements in the Black Panther newspaper, we became headlines. We performed at the Seeds of Time benefit with Bobby Seale, along with Elaine Brown, October 11, 1970, at the Oakland Sportsman Club near Merritt College. We performed in San Francisco, the People's Free Benefit, at the Sportsman Inn on November 1st, which a full-page ad in the Panther paper promoted as their first major San Francisco performance.
We performed in Los Angeles, Patrick Payton Place on December 8th, along with legendary R&B singer Carla Thomas. On December 27th, the group headlined a bill with well-known local singing group, the Natural Four, at the Blue Gardenia in West Oakland. The Lumpin played along with the rock band Gold at the pre-breakfast program, benefit in East Oakland, on January 9, 1971. And at San Jose City College, along with R&B singing group The Persuasions, on Thursday, January 4th. The group performed at UC Berkeley, Pauley Ballroom on September 23rd, as a program sponsored by the Arab Association. It's interesting, we had sponsorship from Arab Association, we had sponsorship from Iranian students, who many of them have gone back to become part of their country, whether it's in the government or also still fighting for social justice in their own nation. On May 5th, we performed at the Revolutionary Intercommunity of Solidarity for Bobby Seale, Eric Huggins, Angela Davis, and Rochelle McGee at the Oakland Auditorium, where the Grateful Dead also performed at the all-day event. We traveled throughout the northeastern United States in November 1970 for a revolutionary tour. We performed at the University of Madison, Wisconsin, Amherst College in Massachusetts, Temple University in Philadelphia, Howard University in Washington, D.C., as well as local parks, union halls, and nightclubs in Boston, New Haven, Connecticut, and New York City. We were often opening acts with speeches by the Black Panther Party leaders and a series of party fundraisers. No, we did not get paid. The Lumpin made an impression everywhere they went. By many accounts, the tour was a successful representation of the Panther Party ideology, as well as the Lumpin as a musical force. And saxophonist David Levison recalls the energy. Now we had David Levison was a white member. We had several white members of our band called the Freedom Messengers. David Levison went on at the encouragement of Bobby Seale, him and several other members who were part of, I told you, the National Committee to Combat Fascism, went on to become doctors and nurses, which they gave their practice, and went on to also work with Doctors Without Borders all around the world. So I want to also mention, because I know I want a little bit of time open up if people have questions or comments. I just want to talk about a couple other things very quickly before I close out. One of the things I want to mention is that we were recently contacted concerning one of our songs. And there was a 45. You can actually go on our website. And the first side, Bobby Seale had been kidnapped. He was at a wedding. He was actually getting married. And they kidnapped him, I believe, out of Berkeley. They took him back first to Chicago, the Chicago 7 trial. They made a movie about it. He was never part of the Chicago 7. It was harassment on their part. That's why they had him bound and gagged. Charles Gary was his lawyer, wasn't able to be there. Then he went on to Connecticut for that trial. And while that was made, there was another 45, my favorite, which was called Won't Be No More. And I'm just going to repeat the lyrics for you. From Watts to Brownville, we find misery, but there won't be no more. Won't be no more. There won't be no more, won't be no more rats, dirt, and kids who are hungry. There won't be no more, won't be no more. Because we've seen how to be free, the pigs on our streets in poverty. To this way of life, we're closing the door, so there won't be no more. There were times we stood by. We stood by like we could not see. But there won't be no more, won't be no more. Can't be no more, can't be no more. We'll get guns to defend our community. There won't be no more, can't be no more, can't be no more. So I want to call Frida, would you come up front and tell people exactly what is happening now with this particular song before I close out at this point in time? Thank you. This was actually, there was a master tape we recorded at Merritt College Live Conference. We could not find it. The way that Ricky Benton was able to even bring this, there were like 6 songs he found at the archives. It was a tape, and he checked it out. The guy allowed him to check it out. And he was able to take it and, as much as he could, got the guy at KPFA to digitally mix this old cassette tape down. Because the reel that we did, the recording, disappeared. We figured the FBI got it. When Ricky Vincent went back to take the tape back and ask for this person, they said that person doesn't work there. But he was able to get this at this point in time. So would you please tell everybody what is happening with that particular song of Freedom?
Hi. So we've recently been acquainted with the directors and producers of Eyes on the Prize, which is a classic civil rights documentary. And they are doing a continuation, a 6-part series of the civil rights movement from the 90s to 2000s. And they are licensing one of the Lumpen tracks for this in one episode. And to work along that, we are hopefully also working to reissue the 7-inch of the Lumpen this year.
Thank you so much. And thank you. And you guys, you know, the iconic Eye on the Prize series is an honor because it just doesn't represent, it represents Oakland. It represents all of us. So having this opportunity today, and I know it's about a little after 3, I want to open it up in a minute for questions and comments of what me and Professor Steve have given today. And I tell you, we didn't have enough time. We actually need a forum where we can have several days to really get into some things and have what we call breakout sessions of what we call solutions. Not come together and talk on a panel, but actually talk about how we can begin to create concepts, not incubators, but model concepts. So, I just want to basically end at this point how it is important to begin to build our own libraries. We're not saying this out of alarmism, just give us the credit. We know what we know, what we know, what we know. Been there, done that, seen it happen before. They are moving very quickly. This is their backlash of total suppression, total fascism, Nazism, and all rolled into one. So it is going to be our charge to continue to educate one another, to educate our children, and we can do it. We are planning on creating educational classes and centers and locations. This is something that all our churches, again, there are churches in Florida who are offering their services, opening their doors to teach these classes. That was part of the civil rights era. So that is so important at this point in time. And I just want to tell everybody we appreciate everyone coming out at this point in time to hear. And hopefully when you walk away today, and somebody says something about the Black Panther Party, you can say, that's not it. Let me tell you basically what it is. Well, how do you know this? Because I heard it from those that made it happen. We see through their eyes, walk in their shoes, and hear from their mouths. I also want to recognize Sue Mark's search back there. We have created a program called the Here's Here People, Reaching People, and it's a little truck. And we brought people in North Oakland together to where they're learning the stories of the history from residents and learning what is taking place and bringing communities together. We want to take this concept all over Oakland and all over the country. So, in closing, before we open up, I want everybody, I'm the one who always does these, like, would everybody please stand up with me? Please stand up with me. It's the concept of today. And I want everybody to say this, and we're going to do it like 3 times. And I want, hopefully, it infuses you. So many decades, we talked about power to the people. We're telling it is now power of the people. We have the ability, we have the strength. Each one reach one, each one teach one. Don't think of changing the world, reaching thousands of people. It's one person at a time. It's one step at a time. So, I want you to, what we call, you repeat after me, and please do it with fervor and reverence. Are you ready?
Yes.
Are you guys ready?
Yes.
All right. Power of the people.
Power of the people.
I have the power.
I have the power.
You have the power.
You have the power.
We have the power.
We have the power.
Power of the people. One more time. Let's hear it now. Power of the people.
Power of the people.
I have the power.
I have the power.
You have the power.
You have the power.
We have the power.
We have the power.
Power of the people.
Power of the people.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.